How many repetitions should you be doing if you're interested in training for physique enhancement or bodybuilding? Hello everyone, hey, this is Mike Kola coming to you from Mike Kola Fitness. I've been a fitness trainer and gym owner for over 25 years. And in this video, I want to talk about what is the ideal amount of reps you should be doing if you're interested in training for bodybuilding or physique enhancement. If you really want to maximize your muscular size, how many reps should you be doing? How long should your time on the load be? This is a question I get asked all the time in my gym. You know, people come in and they're really interested in training for physique enhancement. They've read so many different things. They've heard so many different things. Traditionally, bodybuilders stayed in that 8 to 12 rep range. And a lot of people feel that's the best way for muscular size. Some people think doing lower reps, doing greater reps. But let's take a little bit of a scientific approach to this today and take a look. First, I like to take a look at energy systems. Then I want to take a look at muscle fiber type. And then let's try to bring it all together and look at both of those things and determine what is the ideal amount of time on the load if you're training for maximal muscle size. Okay, let's first go into energy systems. Okay, all muscle contraction is fueled by ATP, Anderson triphosphate. Now, ATP is stored actually in the muscle cell. It's there right now, but there's only enough ATP in the muscle cell for a few seconds of muscular contraction. So literally, you can actually do a 1 rep deadlift and within 2 or 3 seconds and pretty much fuel all that movement by stored ATP in the muscle. But obviously, if you're exercising for more than a few seconds, you go into that phosphocreatine phase. That's where basically ATP is broken into ADP, Anderson diphosphate. Then you pick up a phosphate molecule from creatine to make ATP. And this will give you a few more seconds of muscle contraction. This system, actually, this first energy system, that ATP, creatine phosphate phase, can last for upwards of up to somewhere around 30 seconds. You read in textbooks, it can last for somewhere around 30 seconds or so. And also, this is why creatine, when people take creatine, why creatine works so well, because you're actually storing more creatine in the muscle. So that creatine mixes with that ADP. You pick up that phosphate molecule to make that ATP. So it basically gives you easier access to make ATP. Okay, so we covered the first energy system. That's that ATP creatine phosphate phase. So say, for example, if you're exercising for more than 30 seconds and you're working pretty hard, you can be going into the glycolysis. That's a glycolytical, type phase where you're pretty much fueling, you're making ATP with carbohydrates, stored carbohydrates in the muscle and in the liver. And this system lasts for anywhere between, say, 30 seconds to 2 minutes. And obviously there's a little bit of an overlap. Sometimes that first phase enters into the second phase, and you can even shift from back and forth. For example, if you're not working out too hard, and say you're in the aerobic phase, which is the third phase, and you start working out really hard, you can go back into glycolysis and start fueling with carbohydrates. But then now let's talk about that third phase. The third phase is just the aerobic phase, which is basically aerobic exercise that lasts, you're fueling with mostly oxygen, and it lasts for more than 2 minutes. So, all your aerobic activity that lasts greater than 2 minutes, you're pretty much making ATP through, the Krebs cycle and through your aerobic passageways. I know this is a real basic explanation of it, but it's still something to keep in mind that all muscle is fueled by ATP, Anderson triphosphate. You have about a few seconds of it stored in the muscle. When you use that up, the body pulls creatine, mixes it with ADP to make ATP. Okay, if that goes beyond 30 seconds, then you're going into that, glycolysis, where you're using carbohydrates that's stored in the muscle to make ATP. And then if you're not working out too hard and then you're lasting more than 2 minutes, you're going into the aerobic passageways to make ATP. Okay, so now we get a real basic, brief understanding of the energy systems of how muscles contract. Now let's get into muscle fiber type, and then we're going to pull this whole thing together. Okay, there's two basic types of muscle fibers. Okay, there's fast twitch fibers and there's slow twitch fibers. There's also intermediary, which we're going to be discussing too. Okay, let's break it down with this. Let's look at the slow twitch fibers. The slow twitch fibers are the oxidative fibers. That means they're very good at fueling the body with oxygen, fat, and carbohydrates as well. It's fuel basically the slow twitch fibers are kind of like dark meat chicken. Think of it like that, like a fatty or dark meat chicken. They're actually red in color. And actually, they have a lot of mitochondria, which is like the powerhouse of the cell. So they're really good at burning fat, oxygen, and some carbohydrates well too. But actually, they're very fatigue resistant, meaning that they don't fatigue easily. They can contract over and over and over again. We're not getting tired, but they're not that strong. So for example, if you're lifting something heavy, you may first start out, like for example, say you're bench pressing 100 pounds, but your one rep max is 200 pounds. So you're using half your one rep max. So it's not that heavy for you, 100 pounds. When you first do that first rep or so, you'll be pretty much starting to set off with those slow twitch muscle fibers. Okay, muscle contraction. Muscle fibers always follow a sequence of contraction, meaning that they'll always start with the slow twitch, then they go into the intermediary, and then they'll go into the fast twitch if you're working hard enough. Okay, if you just say jogging, you may stay in those slow twitch the entire jog. But if you start sprinting, you switch over to your fast twitch fibers. Okay, let's go back. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. So we're talking about the slow twitch fibers. They're oxidative. They're very fatigue resistant. They're not very strong, but they have a lot of endurance. And they're the first muscle cells to be recruited when you start exercising or when you start moving in general. Okay, then let's talk about the fast twitch fibers. Okay, the fast twitch fibers are more like white meat chicken. Think about that big, strong, thick white meat chicken. They're not very fatty. They're really good at burning carbohydrates. They're strong, but actually they fatigue quickly. Okay, and those type 2 intermediary fibers, actually this type 2, actually called type 2A, are a little bit of both. They have characteristics of the slow twitch. They also have some characteristics of the fast twitch. So they're relatively strong. They do fatigue quickly, but not as quick as the type 2B, but they don't have near as much endurance as the type 2A. Actually, I had a professor many years ago who explained these muscle fiber types to me, and it made a lot of sense. For example, imagine there's a big hill and there's a big boulder, okay? And your goal is to push this heavy boulder up the hill. When you start pushing the boulder up the hill, just think you're not tired yet and the hill is not that steep. So first you're recruiting those slow twitch muscle fibers, okay? They start pushing the boulder up the hill. Once it starts getting heavy and the hill starts getting steeper, the body says, oh, wow, I'm not necessarily tired, but I just don't have the strength to push this boulder up the hill any longer. I'm going to start recruiting more of those type 2A fibers, a little more of the fast twitch fiber. So they start helping pushing the boulder up the hill. Now the hill's getting really steep. So now those type 2A, they don't have the strength either. So now we recruit the big boys. Now we're taking in those fast twitch fibers who are as strong, and they're going to try to push the boulder up as fast and as hard as they can. And that's pretty much how these muscle fibers work. They follow a sequence, slow, intermediary to fast. Okay, the fast are only recruited if the resistance is heavy enough to be recruited. For example, if you're just jogging nice and easy, you may never recruit them. If you start sprinting up a hill, you start recruiting the intermediary type 2A, and those big, strong, most powerful type 2B fibers when you're working really hard. Same thing for the example with the bench press example before. If you can bench 200 pounds but you have 100 pounds, your first few repetitions are slow twitch. The weight starts getting heavier. You start recruiting the intermediary. Say you actually did a set to actual failure, you would be recruiting those type 2B, those big, strong, fast twitch fibers. Okay, and also the same thing when it comes to these energy systems. Okay, when you first start that bench press, those first few seconds, you're using that ATP that's already stored in the muscle. Once you use that up, you go to that phosphocreatine phase where you're using creatine that mixes with that ADP to contract and make ATP. Okay, that may last for 10, say to 20, 30 seconds. And then if it's a long time under load, if the set, say you're doing high repetitions and the set's lasting anywhere between 30, say to 2 minutes, then you'll be into glycolysis to fuel the muscle contraction. You'll be using carbohydrates primarily to make the ATP. Okay, so now we have a basic understanding of the energy systems and the muscle fiber types. Okay, so now let's answer the big question. Okay, so if you're training, say, for physique enhancement, for bodybuilding, and you really want to train for muscular size, you have to look at this. What should be your time under load? The big question is, how long should a set last? Should you do 3 reps and pretty much be done in like 3 to 5 seconds and only utilize that ATP initial phase? Should you be training like 6 to 12 reps, have the set last for 30 seconds? Should you be doing, say, 12 to 20 reps and have the set last, say, 60 to 90 seconds? Okay, let's look at it like this. The first thing you have to determine is not really how many repetitions you're doing, it's what your time under load is. So for example, if you're doing a 1 second rep cadence, like just exploding up in 1 second, and you did 10 reps, you only did time under load for 10 seconds. If you're using a 5 second rep cadence and you did 10 repetitions, you'd be doing a set that lasts 50 seconds. So you'll be first in that first energy phase, then you'll be going into glycolysis in that second energy phase. Okay, so that's the first thing. Okay, I personally prefer a slower rep cadence. First of all, I'm a little bit older. I'm in my 50s, and I've been working out for like so many years. And I just think it's a little bit safer and more controlled, and it's easier for me to keep continuous tension on the muscle, which I think for bodybuilding, for physique enhancement, is so incredibly important to close the muscle down. You want to start putting tension on the muscle, and you want to keep it there the entire time, as long as the set will last. Because, for example, if you understand these energy systems, if you do rep and you lock out, you're starting that sequence all over again. But when you keep that continuous tension on, you're really closing the muscle down, and I think you're going to get a much better response. So first you have to determine, okay, what's your rep cadence? I like a 5 to 6 second rep cadence for myself, but you can pick whatever you want. If you want to do a 3 second rep cadence, you can. If you want to do that super slow training, say a 10 seconds constant each set, you can do that too. Studies shows that both are effective. Studies shows that training explosively really works well too. Some studies show that training a little bit slower helps as well. But first determine what your rep cadence is. Let's say we're using a 5 second rep cadence, okay? I would do this. Since you want to fully develop the muscle, you want to work those slow twitch, intermediary, and fast twitch muscles, the answer to the question is you want to train at all different rep ranges. Okay, you want to do some sets where you're failing, say, in less than 30 seconds. So if you're doing a 5 second rep cadence, say you're doing 5 to 6 reps, say you would do that once per week. The next time you train that body part, say a few days later, say you want to train at a greater time under load. Say you want to be in that 30 to 60 second time under load rep range. So you go from that first energy system in the glycolysis there, and then pretty much you're starting off with those slow twitch fibers. You're keeping the time under load greater on those intermediary fibers, so they get developed as well. Okay, for example, if you did all your work where you failed at, say, only 30 seconds, yes, you would go from slow twitch to intermediary to fast twitch pretty quickly, but you really wouldn't be taxing say, for example, those intermediary fibers. The volume of training for those intermediary fibers would not be that great. Yes, you would be going, say, to failure and really taxing those type 2B fibers. But some research has shown that bodybuilders seem to have a great development in those intermediary fibers because they seem to have a greater time under load, and they train at a little bit higher rep ranges. For example, a bodybuilder who does like triples, does singles, does 2-3 reps, does most of their training, in the low rep range. They're set to end in seconds. Like, say, maybe a 30-second set might be a long set for a power lifter. So even though when they do a quick lift, when they work out hard, they go right to those fast twitch fibers. Power lifters are stronger than bodybuilders generally, but they're generally not as muscular. The reason why bodybuilders and physique enhancement athletes are more muscular is because they really try to develop all 3 muscle fibers. the slow twitch, the intermediary, and the fast twitch fibers. And you can do that by training in different rep ranges, or as I like to call it, training at different times under load. So for example, say you can even do it all pretty much in the same workout. First you can do a nice warm-up set. Say you do 20 repetitions with a 5-second rep cadence, so you're really getting into that glycolysis phase. You're really, having a great time under load. All muscle fibers have a great time under load. They all get developed in a long set, like a 20 rep set. Then maybe your second set, you may want to put on a little more weight. You may want to reduce your rep rate, say go down to 10 repetitions. Okay, so you'll be failing at about 50 seconds of time under load. Okay, and then you may want to end by just doing a really high, like powerlifting type thing, like triple. Maybe just ending with 3 reps, and maybe do a 4th set. Go back up to a high rep set. You also train your neurological system as well too. You always want to work that neurological system. The first set, I like doing a high rep first set. It kind of tunes the muscle to contract better. You're hitting it with some high reps. You're really making a good neurological connection with the muscle. And then you want to go into your different rep ranges. Okay. I know I tried to cover a lot of different things in this video. I'm also going to try to do some other videos where I break it down. Maybe we'll do a video just on energy systems and go into a little more detail. Then we'll do another video on just muscle fiber type and go into that in a little more detail. But what you should really take away from this video is that if you're interested in bodybuilding and you're interested in physique enhancement, really at any age, if you're 50, if you're in your 50s like me, if you're a young person in your 20s, you really want to train at different times under load to fully develop the muscle. Do some sets that last 30 seconds or less. Maybe do some sets that go from 30 to 60 seconds. And then you may even want to do some really high reps, some high rep or great time under load sets lasting from 60 seconds upwards up to 2 minutes. Okay. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this video. If you did like this video and you're watching this on YouTube, give me a thumbs up. If I may post this on Facebook. If you're watching on Facebook, give me a like. And I always like to end this video by saying that if you live in Westchester, New York, and you're looking for a great gym to train in, look me up, Mike Cola Fitness. I have a gym in Mount Kisco, New York. We really can help you get into top shape. Well, take care. Hope to hear from you soon.